Hi there, my name is Nicole Dick. I live in Littleton, Colorado. I am a Master's of Divinity student at ILIF, School of Theology in Denver. And I have put off making this video for a long time for a few different reasons. One of those reasons being is I wanted to look super cute. And I finally just came to this place in my mind where yeah, I want to look super cute because I'm that kind of a person. Not gonna lie. But I'm also, I'm never gonna look like Beyonce, and I can't wait until I do because that's never gonna happen to make this video. And so, what this video is explaining what my vision is, what I am doing at ILIF, School of Theology, what my plan is with my education, and explain why I'm asking for your help financially. And also to give you my call story. So what in my life has led me to this place where I'm doing what I'm doing? What has called me to pursue this life that I am? And I am getting a master's in divinity to become a board certified chaplain. And with that, I see myself working with veterans in a wilderness survival setting. So I'm getting my degree so I can become board certified as a chaplain. And I am going to go through Outward Bound's instructor program, wilderness survival instructor program, so that I have the skills and the tools to work with veterans in the way that I want to. So that is what I'm doing, and my school is amazing, and they are willing to match up to $3,500 of anything that is donated to me and to my education through a GoFundMe account. So that's what this is, okay? And so I'm going to give you my call story so you can learn about who I am and why I want to do what I want to do. And get all comfy and settle in and get your drink because this is going to take like 15-20 minutes. I'm just going to let you know straight up. Okay. So like I said, my name is Nicole. I am 30 years old. I'm single. I have a dog named Huck who you'll probably see walking around. I was born and raised in small town Iowa. My mother and father are amazing people and amazing parents, and they converted to the Mormon, so the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, before I came along. And so I was raised Mormon, and I'm still Mormon today. But being raised Mormon in small town Iowa, there weren't many of us around. In fact, we were the only ones in our town, in our school. And because of that, well, first off, I just always loved to go to church. I'm a church-going girl. And I would go to Baptist camp with my friends. I would go to the Methodist church with my grandmother. I would participate in Lent with my Catholic friends. I just didn't want to be left out of anything. And so, but starting when I was really young in the Mormon church, you start praying publicly when you're 3 years old, and you start giving talks or sermons when you're 5. We just start them really young. And I have always loved to be in the spotlight. I've always loved to give talks, to pray, to sing, whatever. I even remember being a little bit older, I would always volunteer for these things, and even when the Sunday school teacher didn't show up or whatever, I'd be like, I'll teach, I got this, don't worry about it, got it covered. And I was never very good or anything, but I just love to do it. And I love to talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so that's just a little bit about my spiritual background, okay? And I've always been a believer. Faith, I think, has been a spiritual gift for me. So my dad, growing up, he was first my art teacher, and then he became my principal. And I remember when he was a principal, I was, the last year of high school, I volunteered to work at the daycare that was located at the school. And this is one of my favorite memories of my dad, just to kind of give you an example of the home that I was raised in. So I was working at the daycare one morning at the school, and the other ladies at work, they were like, Nicole, come here. You have to see your dad. And so I went over to the window, and I looked out the window, and my dad, even though he was the principal, he was taking his turn on recess duty with all the kids. And so I look out the window, and there's my dad, and all the kids are lined up behind him playing Follow the Leader. And then I watched as my dad helped the kids one by one across the monkey bars. And that memory has always stayed with me. My mother has always been like, how do I explain it? She has really been an amazing example of service and giving service quietly. And she would sneak money into diaper bags and purses. She would fill up refrigerators with food and cupboards with food while people were out of the home. She was just, and still is, always quietly giving to people. And so those are the examples that I grew up with. And my grandmother, I also grew up with my grandmother. My grandma has always been my best friend and my biggest cheerleader. And she's just been an example of like a strong, independent, positive person. Now I want to share with you some personal experiences that have really shaped the person that I've become. And one experience that I want to share with you was my first year of college, my freshman year of college. Had a really wonderful friend group. I just felt so blessed. And one of the boys in this group, he is gay. And I remember the night that he came out to our friend group. And I'm pretty sure we were all thinking, yeah, we know. But I just remember him crying and crying. And as he came out to us, just, really fearful and afraid of how we were going to react. And of course, all of us react with love and grace for our friend because we love him and we love who he is. But one thing really stuck out to me. I remember him crying and saying that he's prayed so many times that God would change him. And I remember that just reaching deep down into my soul and made me really sad and made me confused. And so I remember asking my dad about it. My dad said, well, why don't you pray about it? I was like, okay. So I went and I prayed to Heavenly Father about it, and I asked him about it. Like, I don't understand. Like, this is hard, and I don't like to watch my friends suffer and go through all these feelings. And, like, why is he gay, or why haven't you answered his prayers and made his life easier, and all these different things. And my answer, it literally was a voice, and it was, Nicole, it doesn't matter why anyone is the way that they are, because the reason should never change the way that you love them. And this was so powerful for me, and it really has directed my life ever since. Like, it doesn't matter why someone is the way that they are. And it doesn't matter what their story is, what their mistakes are, what their strengths or weaknesses are. No matter any of those things, it never should change the way that I love and interact with somebody. And so that is something that has really shaped my view on the world. And so then fast forward a couple years, and I transferred schools and went out to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, which is a Mormon school. Okay, it's a church school. And it was a very scary thing for me. I didn't want to move away from home. I didn't want to be around all those Mormons. I didn't know how to be around a lot of Mormons because I didn't grow up that way, even though I'm a Mormon myself. But it ended up being what I needed. And it was there that I love going to classes and having professors pray before class started. And I loved, this is when I started having like leadership roles in my congregation at church, which really helped me gain some skills. Also, I remember being in this class once. It was a marriage and family class. And we did this really weird activity, so just go with me on this, where we were partnered up with someone else and we were giving these like terrible scenarios, okay? Like for example, let's say you discovered your spouse was having an affair or things like that, okay? And then we had to decide what we were going to do. Oh man, it was crazy, crazy. So anyway, but it ended up changing my life. Because I remember being in class, I remember the lighting, I remember the whiteboard and everything. I remember making this decision deep down inside of me that no matter what happened in my life, no matter what anyone might ever do to harm me, that I would always choose forgiveness. I also learned for myself that forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. That's important. Okay. But I decided that from this moment forward, that I would always choose to forgive anything and everything that would happen to me in my life. This is important because, well, I have lots of opportunities and lots of opportunities to be forgiven. Okay. So then I decided to serve a full-time proselyting mission for my church, for the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I remember looking up at my vision board one day, and I've always been the type, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to save the world. And I remember looking up at my vision board and just being overcome with the Spirit, just knowing that there's no better way to change the world, to save the world, than to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because that's who does the real saving, is Jesus Christ. He has that power to redeem us, to strengthen us, to heal us, to comfort us. And so I decided to serve a mission. And when you first leave on your mission, you go to a place called the MTC, which is the Missionary Training Center. You're there for a few weeks, and this is where you make sure you learn the doctrine and how to teach people. And I loved being there. I loved being there. And just, I mean, like, every waking hour, you are studying the scriptures and the doctrine of Jesus Christ. And I just loved that. I loved that being my whole day. And then when I went out into the field, you really, as a missionary, you live separate from the world, meaning there's no TV, there's no secular music, there's no radio, there's no internet, there's no phone, things like that. And I loved that life. Like, you think it would be hard, but it's really not. And it was great, and it was fabulous. And I learned, too, from my mission that not only did I love being immersed in the gospel 24/7, but I loved teaching, and that I was kind of good at it, and that this is a skill that I wanted to explore and grow. Then, shortly after my mission, my best friend, my grandmother, she passed away. She had a stroke on Valentine's Day, and a week later, she died. And that time in my life, that week, and her death was literally one of the most beautiful and spiritual experiences of my life. Not only has my grandmother greatly shaped the person that I am, but her death also did. And after her death, I moved back up to BYU to finish my schooling, and I really struggled with depression. And I started seeing a therapist, and I love therapy. I'm all about it. And that was really helpful. But it was that I know depression manifests itself in a lot of different ways. And at this time in me, like, it was the kind of depression where I couldn't move. Like, I literally couldn't lift my body off of the floor. And unless If you've experienced that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, it's really hard to connect with. But like, I couldn't shower, I couldn't brush my teeth. Like, I literally, no matter how much I willed my body to do things, it wouldn't do them. And I was on medication for just a few months, but it was what I needed to function like a normal person. And then after a while, I kind of found my place. I got involved in musical theater in the community, and that was so great, and started to make friends. And I found myself in this weird place where, weird but wonderful place, where all of my friends were these gay Mormon boys that went to BYU. It was weird. It was wonderful. But it was weird. And I learned some really key things here. I learned that people don't care if you can relate to them. If you listen to them with compassion and no judgment, and you validate their feelings. When you do those things, it doesn't matter if you've never walked in their shoes or not, because you're building trust and you're showing up for people. And many times that's all they need. And I learned, I'm so grateful for those lessons. Then I had this friend who was such an important friend in my life. And he was going through some really, really hard things. And I remember this one day, he just like freaked out. He just snapped and he freaked out. And he freaked out on me. And he was speaking loudly and in my face and saying all these really hurtful things to me about me. And I just had kind of almost like this outer body experience where I could almost like come away from the situation while it was happening and see very clearly that this wasn't about me. The things that he was saying to me and about me were not true, first of all, but this whole situation was not about me. And in that moment, while it was happening, I was able to forgive him. I also learned that I could forgive without ever receiving or even expecting an apology. And I contribute like that whole experience to my decision that I made years prior to forgive people who hurt me, no matter what. And I think I also learned that I can forgive and still feel pain at the same time. And so that was a very important moment in my life. And then I ended up moving to Colorado. One of my best friends went through a divorce and asked if I would come out and help her. And I needed a change in my life, and I loved Colorado, so I said, okay. And I moved from Provo, Utah to Colorado. And while I was living there, I was able to have other leadership roles in my congregation. And I met a man. I met a man, and it was magical, and it was beautiful, and it was meant to be. And this man is a really good man. And I still love him deeply. But this man, he's not a problem, but he has a lot of problems, and he took them out on me, and the relationship became extremely abusive, verbally, mentally, physically, a lot of control, manipulation, intimidation. And during this time of this relationship, I was the Relief Society president in my congregation, meaning I was over like all the women in my congregation. I was like their leader, and it was my responsibility to take care of them. I was also a volunteer ordinance worker in the Denver Temple, and I was also volunteering once a week at a soup kitchen. And I know that doing all those things, having all those opportunities while I was in this relationship was one of the things that saved me, that kept me alive. Like my responsibility and duty to other people and the opportunity to serve and to be in the house of the Lord are things that sustained me when I was in this really abusive relationship. And coming out of this relationship, I almost felt like the aftermath, the healing, the recovery, which I'm still on this journey from the abusive relationship, feels harder than the abuse itself. And I still see a therapist, and I'm so grateful for that. And I think one of the other things that really helped me was my war council, my small group of friends who I turn to in need, and also my autopilot. I have made these patterns of living that included scripture study and prayer every single day, temple worship, and attending church and serving in my callings. And so when my life came crashing down, like autopilot flipped in, and I never stopped doing those things. And so lots of times I would show up to church and I wasn't there mentally, but I was there physically. And I know I still benefited from that. And so this man, he's a veteran, and all of his problems and his high level PTSD come from his time at war. Now, I'm not condoning any of his behaviors, so I want to make that clear. It's always wrong to treat people in an abusive manner, okay? But having an understanding of his struggle and why and where all this was coming from gave me compassion, and it opened up my heart. And so coming out of the relationship, I've run a race and raised money for wounded warriors. I'm a part of Team Red, White, and Blue. I love Mission 22. And the awareness that they bring to veteran suicide. And so in a nutshell, all of these things combined have what led me to want to be a chaplain. I love the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love spirituality in general, even when it's not Christian theology. I love to teach people. I love to be a life coach, to be a therapist. I love grief. I've made grief my friend. I love the blessings that forgiveness have brought to my life. And so rolling all those into one, that's the role of a chaplain. Chaplain plays a lot of roles. And because of my experience with him, it's awakened me to how every soldier is my soldier. And I really just have this strong desire and calling to work with them. And to work with them in a setting where chaplains don't often go, in a wilderness survival setting. And so that's my vision. That's what led me on this path. I believe firmly in being there and helping the victims. But I also believe that the abusers, or whatever you want to call them, that they are just as important and worthy of help. And so if I can play a role in helping veterans or anyone else who struggles with PTSD or trauma, and maybe directing them towards resources that can help them, and just being in a place where, yeah, I haven't walked in their shoes, but listening with compassion and with no judgment and validating their experience, that's what I want to show up for. That's what I want to do. And I know that I'm good at it. And that's all because of Heavenly Father and who He's created me to be. And I'm so grateful that I have the privilege to go to school, to learn what I need to learn and the skills and have the practice to be able to help people in the capacity that they need. And so that's my story. So that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm asking for your help so I can be in the position to help others. Thank you for sticking in here and watching and listening. And if you have any questions or anything like that, let me know. And anyway, thank you. Thank you.